What is up, Earthnoids and Spacenoids? I am just a simple new type, and in this episode, we are concluding Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway's Flash. Last time, Mafty attacked Adelaide, and the team lost Emeralda. As they prep for their second wave, Hathaway decides to release Gigi and the EFF soldiers they have prisoner. Gigi rushes back to Adelaide to find Hathaway. This time we will see Lane Aim and Hathaway battle it out in their Gundam, and we will see the outcome of Mafty's war. So let's get into this. Mafty passes over a series of mountains called Flinders Ranges, heading south towards Adelaide when they spot 3 Gustav Karls. They go into action as he believes it isn't a trap. This is confirmed when they swiftly take them out. Hathaway is in range of the airport in Adelaide and lets the missiles rip, but they are blocked by Lane and Penelope Gundam. At the same time, Raymond's Galsazan is in the east, causing havoc on the festival center. Lane moves swiftly. Hathaway fires another missile barrage towards Penelope and their airbase. The ensign takes out a missile, but the rest hits the base. He unleashes funnels. Penelope's leg is malfunctioning from Lane's battle with Galman earlier. Also, funnel missiles is a bad name for Psy Gundam Psychomu weapons. They should be called kamikaze funnels because they are normal funnels with beam weapons, but they can explode on impact. The 2 pilots unleash their funnels and they have a funnel battle. Hathaway says Lane's name on the comms, which throws him off. They're equally matched, and they take out each other's funnels and go in for the melee attack. Odysseus Gundam's skirt armor is destroyed. We talked about last week how Odysseus Gundam plus the flight form system makes Penelope Gundam. Although the book refers to it as Penelope, I'm pretty sure we're seeing Odysseus in battle. Or at least we better be. Imagine it just being the same battle from the first movie again. Hathaway takes a beam rifle energy pack and overloads it, causing an explosion. It does massive damage to Odysseus. Galman tries to help Hathaway, but suddenly he is attacked from behind by 3 Gustav Karls. One of their messers goes down. Galman is too distracted to help now. Galman fires on the festival center and takes cover in the dust. Fencer and Golf try to do the same, but they are shot down. Oh no, Fencer and Golf! Those guys. One thing that the novels do more so than the anime and the manga is that when a mobile suit goes down, that reactor goes off. Tiny nukes are going off all over the place. Also, Tomino goes into detail about Golf and Fencer's units bouncing and ricocheting around before exploding, and it made me laugh. I definitely need to know that Golf bounced 3 times before vaporizing. There are no high-rise buildings in existence in Adelaide anymore. Underground, Commander Mainzer informs Kenneth that the barrier is finally ready. He pulls up the monitor and watches as the 2 Gundams bounce from one camera to another. Much of the security cameras in the city have been taken out. Lane is on the defensive trying to lure Psy Gundam towards the barrier. Hathaway slices off Penelope's hand. Lane tries to fire off his beam rifle with his other hand, but Hathaway tears through that as well. Odysseus is losing altitude. Hathaway has an opening to take out Lane. He rushes in, but at that moment, the beam barrier is activated. He feels a surging pain before instantly passing out. Electricity flows through the Gundam before falling to Earth. Lane is lucky to still be alive. He heads down to the Gundam and opens the cockpit to see that it is the guy he met back in Davao. For a moment, Lane wonders if Kenneth is an accomplice to Mafty. Hathaway drifts in and out of consciousness. He thought a girl visited him and wondered if it was Gigi. He has come to terms with the fact that he will never see her again. He is being confined in a small cottage in Gulwa, south of Adelaide. He eventually comes to find Kenneth by his side. Kenneth tells him that he gave EFF a run for their money. Hathaway can't really feel his body and wonders if he has his limbs. Everything is there. He just happens to suffer from severe burns from the beam barrier. His heart is also damaged. It seems similar to the effects of someone who survived getting hit by lightning. He asks Hathaway who is Quacksalver. He says he hasn't actually met him. Kenneth lets him rest and says he will have a formal interrogation soon. However, that interrogation will not happen. Unknown to Kenneth, the cabinet members voted to completely bury this incident and all things Mafty. They're going to General Cohen this shit. When Kenneth heard of this decision, he was so furious that he submitted his resignation. He has been so disillusioned by the Federation throughout this incident and couldn't take it any longer. Of course, the Federation will use this as an opportunity to point fingers at Kenneth for the operation. They won't see their follies. They will just continue powering through for the benefit of themselves. This also guarantees that Hathaway will be executed. Kenneth tells Hathaway of this. He tells him that Gigi did come to visit him, but she probably won't get a chance to see him again considering the situation. Honestly, how was she able to see him at all considering the situation? Hathaway's lucid memories weren't a dream. He tells him that he sent Gigi back to Hong Kong, but Hathaway knows that is a lie and she is still in Adelaide. Kimberly wasn't punished for his poor leadership in Owenbelly and has no sense of shame. Kenneth lets Hathaway rest once again. Much of Mafty's forces went down during the attack, but what remains went underground and weren't heard from again. Of course, the Federation didn't learn from their mistakes. They are planning on doubling down on their immigration policy and using Mafty as a tool to acquire more power. Nothing ever changes. As Kenneth steps out of Hathaway's room, he is informed that Commander Bright has arrived. The EFF commanders meet with one another. Bright wonders if the Mafty prisoner gave any useful intel. All Kenneth can say to him is that he is very mature for his age. Bright showed up a day after Mafty was shot down. Though they couldn't help defend Adelaide, they had been helping over the past 4 days with snuffing out Mafty forces. Kenneth feels an unbearable weight for what he has to tell Bright. He thinks to himself that he should have never met with him. Luckily, Bright changes the conversation, asking about Kenneth's resignation. He bears the shame of the failure at Adelaide. Bright says that he put in his resignation 3 years ago, so it will take a while. But Kenneth says, "No, I'm a screw-up. You are extremely competent, Bright. They're gonna keep you around forever." He doesn't say those exact words to Bright and passes the blame on the higher-ups. But he kinda says that straight up to Bright, and that is true. The things that make Bright such a great hero is ultimately what makes him no different than his bureaucratic higher-ups. A competent man with morals and values will always be taken advantage of in the Federation's broken system. To put it more bluntly, the system can't be fixed from the inside. Ignoring the genocide, which is hard, I know. This has always been Shar's platform. This was the reason Shar was so angry with Amado and Bright for running back to the Federation after Grips and the Neo-Zeon War. The rise of Manhunters, and the now doubling down of said Manhunters, is ultimately no different than the Titans, and no one has learned anything. Kenneth says that regardless of if this is true or not, the Federation sees Bright as a golden child who brings new types into the world. They are going to hold on to that for as long as they can. Bright continues his search for Mafty survivors, and Kenneth escorts him out. Kenneth says that conversation took more energy out of him than any military operation. As he tries to rest, he is met with General Guggenheim. They go to Kenneth's office. The commander informs him that they officially accepted his resignation, but he still blames himself for the cabinet members that died. Guggenheim says that he has integrity and he shouldn't let his failures weigh him down. The commander showed a moment of humanity which threw Kenneth off, as he hasn't seen that from any of the higher-ups in a while. His pension won't be at his new rank of colonel, but rather will be paid out at the rank of captain. You only did one mission as a high commander, so fuck you, I guess. Kenneth doesn't seem to care. Bright Noah will be taking over his command, even though he asked to retire years ago. He tells Kenneth it will only be for 3 months until they find a new commander. This is most likely a lie, and they will find an excuse to keep him for as long as possible. Also, the cabinet members decided to vote to have Mafty executed. Kenneth's last mission is to execute Mafty. He is hesitant, so Guggenheim suggests that maybe he has his successor execute him for him. For a second, Kenneth thinks maybe it would be better if a relative did it. He asks the general if he knows who Mafty is. Of course, none of the generals can be bothered, even though I'm sure they received intel. The weight of what's going on in Kenneth's mind is too much for him to keep to himself. He drops formality and says, "I'm going to need your discretion on what I am about to tell you." He tells Guggenheim that Mafty is Hathaway Noah. The general is genuinely concerned. He says he is glad they didn't dismiss him earlier. Kenneth must carry out his duty. They can't have a father kill his own son. As Kenneth takes his leave, Guggenheim tells him that he has been granted residency on Earth if he wishes to reside here. A throwaway comment agitates Kenneth as a high commander uses privilege as a form of hush money, like a mob boss. He is more annoyed with how casual the general was about it. However, he learned that not only he was granted citizenship, but also Gigi as well. Bright is informed by Commander Crescendo that his command will take 3 months. Since most of the Mafty forces have been taken care of, he's going to take it easy and treat this like a vacation. He says he will find a few good fishing spots and maybe even give his son Hathaway a visit. He says he wants to be there for the execution of Mafty, but Crescendo highly suggests that he doesn't attend. Bright heads out to meet with Guggenheim. He heads down to Adelaide and tours the hangar to see Kasai Gundam. The mechanic tells Bright that they don't know who made this Gundam, but he seems to think it looks like an Anaheim job. Bright says that is the world of adults for you. Bright is quoting Camille in this moment. It seems that his young new type wards certainly rubbed off on him. Bright is in the mindset of not asking any questions and keeping his head low until he can get out of this bureaucratic nightmare. He notes enemies are now piloting Gundams, but the mechanic tells him that the Gundam pilots have always had a rebellious spirit. The mechanic is right, and he says this more for you, the audience, but don't Bright-splain Bright. Two officers tell Hathaway that his execution will be at 4:30 a.m. in the morning and tell him it will be done by a firing squad. He asks the men if the option for hanging was ever on the table. They say one cabinet member pushed for his hanging even if he was still passed out. This one cabinet member seemed adamant. Now, throughout the attack on Adelaide, we notice a cabinet member being quite emphatic about getting rid of Mafty by all means necessary. Even during the attack, Kenneth mentions that he wouldn't be surprised if one of these men were Quacksalver. When Hathaway gave his message to the world as Mafty, they knew of the cabinet members voting of the Return to Earth bill, meaning someone in EFF is leaking information directly to Mafty. It is never outright said that Quacksalver has been masquerading in front of us this whole time as a cabinet member. This question about asking about a hanging seems to be some type of canary in the coal mine situation that lets Hathaway know Quacksalver is still around, meaning Hathaway will continue without him. The two men make their leave. He was prepared for this day since he joined Mafty a little over a year ago. He thinks about Karaya and wished that he met up with her when he was in Darwin. A nurse comes in and gives him a word processor to write his will. Remember, this novel was written before a laptop existed. He doesn't have anything to write, but he asks for an apple, and she obliges. Even though Hathaway is a terrorist and a murderer, this woman shows him with compassion and empathy. People like this in the low tiers of Federation society were the ones Mafty were fighting for. He is glad that someone like her is around for his last moments. He apologizes to her for any citizens hurt, but she informs him that most of the citizens made it out safely thanks to his message. He passes out for a little bit and wakes up to the nurse leaving a pen and paper. She seems sad at how sudden his execution is. Hathaway wants to practice walking for his execution, and the nurse helps him. Afterwards, he has finally brought the apple. It didn't have that crisp bite he was looking for and was a disappointment. He says that he merely aspired to be a new type like his heroes before him. He didn't do this because of Quest or Char's rebellion, but he can't exactly pin why he chose this path. Perhaps Gigi was right. Gigi is being held up in a cottage as a prisoner. She doesn't even have a CD to listen to. Remember, written before a laptop. Every hour that goes by for her makes her heart drop more since she learned of Hathaway's execution. She heads out and demands to go to Kenneth's location. They won't let her see the execution, but she can see the Commodore. She reaches the discreet location where Kenneth is meeting with Bright. He notices Gigi and tells her to leave. She doesn't want Hathaway's father to be present at his execution. Kenneth bluntly says this is a man's job and Hathaway is prepared for this. She runs away crying. Bright is probably watching and thinking, why did a girl show up here at 4:30 in the morning crying? Weird. Kenneth is able to tell Bright to wait while quickly finishing up some tasks. He's going to quickly do this himself before Bright can figure it out. Hathaway is transported to the courtyard where a firing squad awaits him. He tells him his sentence and asks him if he has any last words. He says, I believe that someday the sound mind of humanity will protect this earth. Until then, the mistakes made by people will continue to be corrected by Mafty. He tells the priest he is grateful for everyone in his life. Kenneth puts the blindfold on Hathaway and tells him that he always saw him as a friend. The firing squad takes aim and fires. Gigi was so caught up in her tears that she didn't hear the shooting. He meets with Bright after the execution. Bright heard the gunshots and wondered how it went. He knew he went through with the execution without him. He tells Bright that he was a worthy opponent. The death signature that Kenneth signed had no name attached to it. Though he requests it, Hathaway will be given no gravesite or memorial. Bright's new don't ask question attitude saved him from knowing his son's death. An older Bright would have been more inquisitive and would most likely cause Kenneth to break down. Later that day, Kenneth assumed all power to Bright. Gigi and Kenneth didn't talk to each other that night. The next day, he said his goodbyes to Francine, his assistant, and wishes Bright good luck. Meisner will be staying with Cersei under Bright's command. He notes that Bright's eyes are just like Hathaway's. Which ones? The tiny dot eyes? Or the more realistic eyes they gave him in Char's counterattack? They head back to Adelaide, where Lane and the Cersei pilots give him a gift and thank him for everything he has done. They don't state what the gift is, so leave a comment on what you think Lane gave Kenneth. Kenneth reciprocates by giving Lane his riding whip. Gigi and Kenneth head to Davao, where he is effectively a civilian. Neither of them can speak, and they retreat to their separate rooms in a hotel. After everything that went down, Kenneth can't hold it in, and he bursts into tears. The next day, the two are in shock as Gigi informs Kenneth of the news. It seems that someone leaked that Mafty is Hathaway, and they point fingers at Bright for executing the terrorist. The source is Guggenheim, and Kenneth realizes that he was stabbed in the back by the general. The two are horrified for how the Noah family will react to this news being broke to the public. However, there are no records of Hathaway being related to Mafty. Bright will most likely wonder the truth for the rest of his life. They realize this means people will most certainly be after Kenneth after this news, so they decide to take refuge in Japan. They take a plane to Taiwan and eventually get a charter to Japan. Gigi wonders what Kenneth plans on doing now that he is a civilian. He says that he wants to seek out new types. Gigi says that Hathaway will be remembered anytime that Mafty is spoken, and likens his cause to the Murrumbidgee River, a river that never runs dry. And that will conclude Mobile Suit Gundam, Hathaway's Flash. This is quite the bummer, not only because of the death of Hathaway, but because it seems that the Federation is destined to never change. Even though Mafty is destroyed, Hathaway was able to change the hearts and minds of at least a couple people, including Kenneth. There's a lot of wandering and forlorning in this story. Hathaway, Gigi, and Kenneth feel alone, abandoned, and desperate, all for different reasons. Even Hathaway couldn't pinpoint exactly what he was fighting for. All he was confident about in the end is that he didn't do it for a quest. He did it for himself. This ending also marks the ending to early Universal Century. We are now moving into late Universal Century. So much pain and chaos have occurred between Space Noids and Earth Noids. But while this was all going on Earth, Jupiter has slowly been growing its own empire. We head to Universal Century 123, where we see the rise of Crossbone Vanguard and Cosmo Babylonia. But that will do it for now, new types. Remember, you don't always find the answers. You could spend your entire life wandering and still find nothing. Is that the message of the story? Damn, that's grim. Alright. Peace.